Welcome to the Chingona Revolution podcast, where we will bring out your inner badass Latina, overcome self-doubt, help you gain clarity, and pave your own path, all while leading with courage. I am your host, Latina coach and speaker, Erika Cruz. Hello, Rebels, and welcome back to this week's podcast episode of Chingona Revolution. I cannot believe I have never dedicated an episode to self-doubt, which is insane because I know that I talk about it so much in a lot of my episodes because this is the number one thing that I think our community struggles with, especially if you are an immigrant or a child of immigrants or first generation or second generation or just come from an underprivileged community. We tend to doubt ourselves more than the privileged individuals. I mean, we all have privilege, but I'm kind of generalizing here. I wanted to record this podcast episode to just share a little bit more around self-doubt, around imposter syndrome. I know sometimes people don't really like that word because the word imposter means like essentially you're being a fake. So I'm going to kind of use the words interchangeably, but in today's episode, I want to talk about self-doubt. I want to normalize self-doubt. I want to also share a few stories from my own life when I've experienced self-doubt. And then I'm going to share a tool that I have my clients use to overcome self-doubt, because self-doubt is inevitable. You're going to doubt yourselves, especially because our brain is wired for survival. So it is negatively wired. It's actually a lot easier to have a negative thought than it is to have a positive thought. So now I'm already like getting into the episode here. But after I give you some tips, then what else? I'm going to share just some examples on how I use it. And then last but not least, we are having a masterclass, which is happening exactly a week from today on July 6th at 5:30 p.m. Pacific time, all about going from doubtful to Chingona, how to double your confidence and courage in 90 days. So I figured a episode specifically on self-doubt would be really helpful leading up to the masterclass. And if you want to learn more, I invite you to sign up for the masterclass. All right, so let's go ahead and jump into this episode. You've maybe heard the phrase of imposter syndrome thrown around. So what exactly is imposter syndrome? It's actually also known as something like the fraud experience or imposter experience, and it can be defined as essentially the feeling of inadequacy and self-doubt that persists despite evident success. So let's give a few examples. Let's say that you have a performance review at work and you get 90% praise and maybe like 5% average, like neutral feedback, and then 5% of like, oh, we'd like you to work on this. So with imposter syndrome, even if like all you got was praise, or even if 95% of the stuff you got was praise, you're fixated on still feeling like you don't belong, or you feel like you are inadequate or not good enough, or you doubt yourself, even though there's evidence of your success. Like maybe you just got promoted and you're like, wait, no, how is this possible? And you're essentially questioning your own abilities. You're questioning your abilities. I guess that would be the best way to say it. So if you're listening to this and you're like, okay, maybe I didn't know what that word was, but I've definitely felt that way. And it can happen, I mean, not just at work, it can happen in relationships, right? Where somebody that you find very attractive or somebody that you think is really intelligent, when they're into you, you start to question, wait, why do they like me? So that is an example of you also doubting yourself. Or another thing could be just like doubting yourself with trying a new hobby, right? Maybe you don't even give yourself the chance because you're doubting yourself. Self-doubt is the killer of all dreams. It really is. And I have a handful of imposter self-doubt stories, like situations in which I felt as if I was an imposter. I want to be really clear. None of you are imposters. None of you are fake. None of you are trying to do something and a fake at it. It's okay to be a beginner. It's like we all start there, right? It's almost like if you want to grow your following, right? And you want to become an influencer or a content creator, and you're like, oh, I can't call myself that because I don't have 100,000 followers yet. Well, it's like, every influencer started with 0 followers, right? And that doesn't make them a fake. It makes them a beginner, and it's okay to be a beginner, and it's okay to not be skilled at things. But I also want to be really clear, you are not a fraud. You can do anything you want to do. And it's okay to try things and not succeed the first few times. That is growth, friends. That is definitely growth. So let's get into a few of Erika's stories around self-doubt. I think the biggest one that stands out to me was when I got into school. Actually, okay, now this requires a little bit of backstory. I was never the straight A student. I was never the book smart person. That was my brother. My brother was always really book smart. And I think later on I realized I'm actually pretty street smart. But at the time I didn't really know. And I just valued intelligence through grades. And my brother got good grades and I didn't. And he ended up going to UC Berkeley. And I made it my mission of I'm going to prove to everybody that I'm worthy enough as well and that I could go to this school. So I worked my butt off and I got in. And I was a transfer student. So that definitely helped me because I wouldn't have gotten in straight from high school because I wasn't applying myself in high school because I believed that I wasn't a good student. And I was essentially like a self-fulfilling prophecy. I ended up going and getting into Berkeley. And my first semester there, I remember actually the first week there, I remember that the homework was more reading than I had ever done in my entire life. And I was I'm still to this day, I'm not an excellent reader. I'm not a super fast reader. So I didn't really read for fun. I was not a fast reader. And suddenly here I am at UC Berkeley and each class is giving me 3 chapters to read. And I have 5 classes and it was so overwhelming. So at the end of that first week at UC Berkeley, my mom calls me because I moved out and she was just checking on me to see how I was doing. And you know how moms just know when something's up? My mom knew something was up with me. And she was like, "Mija, ¿cómo estás?" And I was like, "I'm good." And she was like, "¿Qué tienes?" She could already hear my voice cracking. And then I just started crying and I broke down. So I say to my mom, "Mom, somebody's going to get fired. Somebody effed up." And she was like, "What? What are you talking about?" She was so confused. And I said, "Somebody effed up because they let me into this school and I don't belong here." And I was sobbing. And she didn't even know what to say to me, right? This woman has a 3rd grade level education and here I am at one of the top universities in the nation or in the world. And I'm telling her, I'm convinced. I said, somebody messed up and they let me in and they shouldn't have let me in. Everybody was right. I'm not smart enough to be here. And I was convinced, even though I had evidence of my, I applied, they saw my transcripts, they saw my personal statement, and I got an admission letter, but I was convinced that they messed up. I was very close to quitting that first semester, but a class that I took, it was meant for transfer students and it was meant to help you transition from community college to university, to a 4-year university. And we read a book all about mindset. And it was, I think the book was called Mindset, The New Psychology of Success by Carol Dweck. And it's all about the growth in the fixed mindset. It's a good book. I do recommend it. I think, honestly, the first couple chapters is all you need to read, or you could just look up this woman's TED Talk. Carol Dweck, again, is the name. And that book completely changed my life. That's when I realized that the way you think about yourself and the thoughts that you have about yourself and the way that you view challenges, it matters. And you have the power to change the way that you think about yourself. So I ended up not quitting. And my last semester at UC Berkeley, I ended up getting straight A's. This is coming from somebody who was not book smart, did not really like reading, but I loved learning. So I found my way. I learned how to learn. And then, so that's that first self-doubt story. The other piece of self-doubt came when I ended up getting into my career, when I got into tech. And you know what's so funny? I think when it comes to self-doubt, we always think, oh, once I get to the next level, I'm not going to feel self-doubt anymore. Because I recall when I was in community college, I was like, oh, once I get into a 4-year university, I'm not going to feel self-doubt anymore because I made it. Like I already got into school. And then I got into school and I was like, oh no, like I feel self-doubt here. Once I start working, then I'm going to not feel doubt anymore. And then I got into the workforce and I ended up working in tech. I didn't even know exactly what my job was. I have no idea exactly how I got hired. I'm one of the few women. I'm one of the few Latinas. And I just felt like a fish out of water. And I worked at a really traditional tech company. So it wasn't even like fun new tech. It wasn't like working at Instagram. I didn't even know what our products did. So you can imagine the self-doubt that I had there. And every day I walked into work thinking I was going to get fired. And I was like, well, you know what? Like once I get a promotion, then I'm not going to feel doubt anymore. And let me just tell you, you are going to feel doubt every step of the way. So I hope that these stories from my life help you feel seen and validated, and that it's okay to doubt yourself because everybody doubts themselves. It's actually estimated that about 70% of people experience self-doubt or imposter syndrome, and it will keep happening as you move up, right? It's going to keep happening when you get promoted. It's going to keep happening as your business grows. It's going to keep happening as your relationship evolves. It doesn't matter where you are. Self-doubt can come back at any moment. So the point is not necessarily to get over self-doubt. It is to acknowledge that self-doubt is there and not let that be the driving force with how you make decisions and the actions that you take. So there's a few people in history like Maya Angelou, who's one of the most important authors in American history and a woman of color. She says, I have written 11 books, but each time I think, they're going to find out now. I've run a game on everybody and they're going to find me out. I mean, Maya Angelou is saying this, right? What about Sonia Sotomayor, so the Supreme Court judge, a fellow Latina? She says, I have spent my years since Princeton, while at law school and in my various professional jobs, not feeling completely a part of the worlds I inhabit. I am always looking over my shoulder, wondering if I measure up. I mean, she is literally at the top of like the law field, and she has the highest ranking position she could have. And she's questioning if she measures up. So I hope that between my experiences and these amazing women's experiences, you feel less shame around the self-doubt, because there's nothing wrong with the self-doubt. And you know what happens is like our brains are a creature of habit, right? So of the 60 to 70,000 thoughts that we have every day, it's estimated that 98% of them are the same thoughts. So this means that this inner critic we have, the self-doubt that we have, it's a habit. But because it's a habit, like we also have power over changing that habit. Because as I mentioned at the beginning of the episode, it's much easier to have a negative thought than it is to have a positive thought, because it's what allows us to stay alive. Imagine if you're out walking in the wilderness and you hear something in the bushes, your brain's not going to go, oh my gosh, what if it's a beautiful unicorn? Your brain's going to be like, oh shoot, what if that's a lion or a bear and we're about to get consumed? Let's find safety. And when we lived out in tribes and in the open world, without shelter and without what we have now, it made sense that our brains did that, because that is what allowed us to stay alive. But the thing is, our brains have not fully changed from then. Our brains are the same brains that our ancestors had. So what we see as fear sometimes isn't actual fear. And self-doubt is nothing more than your brain trying to keep you safe. And while it does a really good job of keeping you safe, it also can do a really good job of convincing you to stay in your comfort zone and not do what it is that you want to do. And then that's when we start to feel unfulfilled, which is kind of what the episode of a couple episodes ago, when I talked about living a great life versus a good life. If this podcast resonates with you, I invite you to join my free masterclass, From Doubtful to Chingona, Double Your Confidence and Courage in 90 days. This free class is happening on Thursday, July 6th at 5:30 p.m. PST. You'll learn the 5-step framework that has helped my clients take brave action in 90 days, as well as what is stopping you from embodying your Chingona self, how to get started even with self-doubt and imposter syndrome, how taking brave action heals your inner child, and last but not least, the mindset tools to get out of your own way. You'll also get early access to Courage Driven Latina, which is my group coaching program that always sells out. This program is now 12 months. Yeah, you heard me. 12 months of support and coaching to support you through many courage projects. Inside of Courage Driven Latina, we help you start and execute your courage project. Some of those past courage projects include starting a podcast, building the confidence to speak up at work, starting a coaching business, starting to date after a divorce, and so much more. To secure your spot in the masterclass, join the waitlist for Courage Driven Latina by clicking the link down below in the show notes. Again, this is happening on Thursday, July 6th at 5:30 p.m. PST. If you cannot make it live, don't worry, sign up because we will be sharing the recording shortly after the masterclass. I cannot wait to see you there. Now, let's get back to the show. So, as we're talking about thoughts, maybe you've heard the word limiting beliefs or self-limiting beliefs. So these are just beliefs that you have about yourself that ultimately place a limitation on your abilities. So beliefs that limit you. These are thoughts, right? Thoughts you have about yourself that get in your way of living the life that you want to live. So some of the limiting beliefs that I hear a lot from my clients or that I've even experienced myself are, I'm not smart enough, I'm not qualified, I'm not good at X, Y, and Z, it's hard to do X, Y, and Z, I can't make that much money. Oh, this one is big. It's too late or I'm too old. Let me tell you, you are not too late and it's not too old. And a big one as well, especially in my culture, is like, oh, women don't do that. And the other one is my friends and family won't approve. So all of these are limiting beliefs that stop you from going after what you want, and it doesn't serve anyone. When it comes to something like cognitive behavioral therapy, which is something in therapy like talk therapy that helps you reframe your thoughts, but it pretty much talks about how our feelings influence how we act, and then how we act influence what results we get, correct? So there's also in law of attraction, it's the same thing, right? So like the way you feel and the thoughts you have dictate what happens, as well as with neuroscience. Like there's so many different lines of work that confirm this theory. And within the coaching world, the founder of the Life Coach School, her name is Brooke Castillo, she came up with something called the self-coaching model. So I teach this to my clients. You can look it up online. It's free. It's not something that I came up with. But Brooke Castillo came up with the self-coaching model, which is a framework that can be easily used to reframe your thoughts. So if we know that our feelings come from our thoughts, we can change the way that we feel by challenging those thoughts. And the way that the self-coaching model goes is that a circumstance occurs, and that circumstance then triggers thoughts, and then thoughts produce feelings, and then feelings generate an action, and then an action causes results. Okay, I'm going to give you a few examples because I know that when you're just listening to this, it's probably not that easy to completely grasp, but our thoughts are always going to create our results, and then our results are always evidence of our thoughts. So it's this cycle where like what we're thinking is what we're creating. And when it comes to self-doubt, if it's easier to have a negative thought or an unhelpful thought, we're going to create unhelpful results. Like if we believe we're not good enough, we're going to constantly find evidence that we are not good enough. But if we believe we are getting better every single day, we are going to find evidence that we're getting better every single day. And remember, like a belief is nothing more than a thought that we've thought for a long time. We've convinced ourselves that this is true, but you can change your beliefs. It does take some time. So let me give you an example about using the self-coaching model from one of my clients. So one of my clients hadn't posted on social media, and she was really getting in her own way about it. She was feeling a lot of self-doubt. So the circumstance was that she hadn't posted on social media. So the circumstance is neither good nor bad. It just is. It's a fact. It is a fact. The thought is the opinion you have about the fact. So then her thought became, I don't know how to show up and I'm afraid of being judged. So that made her feel scared, vulnerable, like she's not good enough, which made her act in a way where she was just spending her time overthinking and not taking any action. And she did not post on social media. So the result was that she stayed in her comfort zone and did not post on social media. And then that result gave her evidence of like, I don't know how to show up and I'm afraid of being judged. So she just stood in this cycle. After some work, we really challenged that thought. Is it true that you don't know how to show up on social media? And why are you afraid of being judged? And we really first validated that self-doubt. And then we challenged it. And we were like, is this actually true? And then what we did is we changed that unhelpful thought to a thought that was, my content is going to impact lives. So the circumstance was the same. I haven't posted on social media, but then her thought became, my content is going to impact lives. Well, how did that make her feel? It made her feel valuable. It made her feel excited, and it made her feel like she was ready to help. She had a desire to help. So what kind of actions does she take from those feelings? Well, she started to brainstorm content ideas, created a simple first post, and then she really began to embrace imperfection, because this new thought had nothing to do with her and everything to do with the community she wanted to help. And the result was she started building connections after posting on social media and started impacting lives through social media. Does this mean that she became like, I don't know, the next like influencer in the front of Forbes? Not yet, but she started to take those steps, and then she started to really believe my content does change lives, because she started to get DMs, she started to get followers, she started to get engagement, all of these amazing things that came from just simply reframing that thought. So I've shared a lot with you all, right? We've gone through my own experiences with self-doubt, some people in history's experiences with self-doubt. I've introduced a new tool to you that I share with my clients that, again, you could find online if you'd like. This is nothing different than doing something like cognitive behavioral therapy, as I mentioned, with your therapist, or even if you're just journaling. You don't even have to do this whole tool of self-coaching. All I want you to do is identify that self-doubt that you have. Like, what is that thought you're having about yourself that's holding you back? And just ask yourself this one question. Is this true? Most of the time, no. We're choosing to believe it's true, and that's unhelpful for us. That's very unhelpful for us. So after learning how to challenge your thoughts and reframe your thoughts, or using the self-coaching model, what I find is that people just they think they do it once and then they're done, right? Or they think that, oh, once I've reframed the thought, then I should just keep believing the new thought, or I shouldn't feel the self-doubt anymore. I should feel confident and I should feel empowered. And while that would be great, I want to remind you that when we think a thought repeatedly, it becomes a belief. It's a habit. It takes a while to change a habit. This is why inside of Courage Driven Latina, a courage project is something that we work on for a 90-day period, because that is how long it's going to take you to unlearn something and learn something new. Because you can't stop thinking a thought. You have to replace that thought with a new thought and then find evidence of that thought. I hope you all are following along here. Today's a little advanced. But what I have seen over and over with my clients is they're like, wait, but I already did the self-coaching model like 2 weeks ago, or I already did it, this time, or why am I experiencing self-doubt again? Friends, what I mentioned earlier, you are going to have self-doubt at every stage of your life, at every stage of your career, at every stage of your relationship, at every stage of parenthood. You think having a newborn comes with self-doubt? Try having a 2-year-old, and then a 5-year-old, and then a 15-year-old, right? It does not matter where you are in life. Self-doubt is going to come back. It's what you do with that self-doubt that matters. So I have this little concept that I've been teaching my clients. So A lot of my clients have no idea what this little jar thing is, but I'm still going to share it. So when I was in elementary school, when I was in primary school, our teacher had a jar. And every time we were good, she would put a magnet in the jar. And as soon as we filled up that jar, she would give us a pizza party. So, when you're in school, it's so funny. It's like your family and you could go have pizza on the weekends and it's like not that big of a deal. But as soon as the classroom gets the pizza party, you're like, this is such a big deal. So I want you to envision having two jars, okay? You have two jars and you have a magnet every time you are faced with self-doubt or with a situation. And did I just say magnet? I meant to say marble. Have I been saying magnet this whole time? Okay. Okay. Let me just spill the beans a little bit. So I am very excited about Courage Driven Latina, which is my group program. But we're going to come back to the jar example in a second. I'm super excited about Courage Driven Latina. This is the first time it is going to be a 12-month program, and I have private clients who are joining Courage Driven Latina. If you are looking to find clarity, or if you are looking to take action on something that you've been thinking about for a while, then Courage Driven Latina is for you. Especially because now, again, it is 12 months long. So for my people that have been my private clients that are running businesses or are in leadership and are looking for something a little higher level, I'm actually starting a mastermind, and it is called Magnetic Mastermind. I've been working on a lot of things for the mastermind behind the scenes, hence why I said magnet. So if you are interested in working with me, but you are looking for something more advanced and high touch, then keep an eye out for the mastermind. This was totally not planned, but because Erika messed up, I was like, we're gonna spill the beans here. But I still recommend that you join the masterclass, and I'm going to be staying on to answer any questions, and we can see if Courage Driven Latina is a good fit for you, or if the mastermind's a better fit for you, or if you're just better fit to consume the podcast and the free content at this moment. So, okay, back to my jar example. After Erika spilled some cheese, man, my team's going to be like, what are you doing, Erika? This was not planned. This was not supposed to be the announcement. It's not. You're just getting the little inside scoop because you're listening to this podcast episode. So back to the jar examples. So anytime you are faced with a situation that you could lean into self-doubt for, or you could choose to challenge that, you have these two jars, okay? And one jar represents self-doubt and the other jar represents your most confident version, the version of you that knows that self-doubt is BS. So you get to choose where you put your marble. Are you going to put your marble in the jar of self-doubt, or are you going to put your marble in the jar of the better feeling thought and the more empowering thought and the confident jar? Because you get to choose, believe it or not. And here's what happens, right? Like the self-doubt jar never goes away. And it's not like you're never going to have any marbles in there. But the goal is to put more marbles in the jar of confidence. Are we following along here? So the self-doubt jar is never going to go away. It's always going to be there, and it's never going to be empty. There's always going to be a few marbles there. But can you make the effort to put more marbles in the jar of confidence and of self-belief and of having your own back? Because the jar that fills up is the jar that wins. Like, that's the action you're going to take. So remember, whenever my teacher filled up the jar, we'd get the pizza party. So who's going to get the pizza party? Is it going to be the self-doubt because it's going to be a pity party? Or is it going to be the most empowered version of you? Because that's going to be the most Chingona version of you. That's going to be your higher self. That's going to be who you truly are. So I want you to imagine anytime you come across a situation where you're like, oh, I want to think negatively about myself. Ooh, do I really want to put that marble in that jar? Or do I want to put it in the other one? So to conclude, my friends, everyone experiences self-doubt. Everyone experiences self-doubt repeatedly in their lives, especially if you're female, especially if you're an individual of color, especially if you are a child of immigrants or an immigrant yourself, or if you come from an underserved community. But we hold the power to rewrite our story, because the way that we view ourselves, friends, matters more than anything. So I hope that the jar that you choose to fill up and that gets the pizza party is the jar with your higher self, with your most confident self. I can't wait to see you at the masterclass again, July 6th, 5:30 p.m. Pacific time. Go from Doubtful to Chingona. We're not going to really talk about what I just talked about here. We're more talking about how to make the transition. So join us. If you found this podcast episode helpful, you're going to find the masterclass even more helpful. All right, y'all. I cannot wait to see you there. Hasta luego. Thank you so much for joining me this week. Make sure to visit theerikacruz.com. That's Erika with a K, where you can subscribe to the show so you'll never miss an episode. You can help this podcast grow by supporting me with an Apple Podcast rate and review. If you took anything away from this episode, I invite you to take a screenshot and share it on social media so that your favorite badass Latinas can also check it out. Be sure to tag me at the Erika Cruz. That's Erika with a K, because you know I want to see it. If you're ready to join the revolution and be a part of the Courage Driven Latina community, visit couragedrivenlatina.com to get more information and join the waitlist. Thanks again, and I'll see you next week.